Okay, so everybody's attention please. I want to introduce you to Mr. Greg Baxter. He is a mobile mortgage specialist. He does mortgages not just with one bank or one institution, but he shops a variety of them to get people the best deal. And that's what we call a broker. So there's a difference between people who work at banks and people who work to secure mortgages with a bunch of different banks. So consequently, as a result of that, he gets a lot of leads because he's good at marketing himself. And he's going to talk to us about the stuff we're covering this week in terms of lead management and the big, massive thing that it can be and all that sort of stuff. So welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Mike. I just want to give you a quick background on myself. I was thinking on the way over here, I think I went to Fanshawe back in 1995. Maybe 94, 95, so it just gives you an indication of how old I am. And I took business, so I took some marketing courses. And it's funny because then the career kind of took off really quickly from there. I actually started off and I got into market research. I worked for a couple different companies. What we did is we did the whole 9 yards from interviewing to finding out where your attention is. Like if you go into the banks, for instance, and you see those big screens, this is going back a while, what we did is we did some market research to see where potential customers were looking, what they were looking for, and so we came up with the screens and that sort of thing. So I went from market research and I actually went into the health club industry. And so it was a weird twist. And so what I did is people would pay me to open up a health club for them. To get the health club up and running. The last health club I did, they gave me a $10 million budget, and they said, hey, here's our $10 million, spend it wisely and make us some money. And so what we did from there is I went from developing the club, designing the club, ordering the equipment, hiring the staff, training the staff, making the club profitable. So at the end of the day, the investors came to me, and I met with them about every 6 weeks, and they said, hey, are you making me money or are you not making me money? And so obviously when they're giving you $10 million, we overspent by $1.8 million. So we're at a 11.8 budget, and they were quite upset. But then when we showed them returns on that money, they were quite happy. So then I used to go golfing. It was funny. I used to go golfing every Friday morning with a bunch of different business owners, and they would say to me, "Well, hey, yeah, you're come on in.
Get in here. Yeah. Oh, yeah, good. Good job. I'll get you on the tennis after.
You're making lots of money, but you're working crazy hours." And so then I decided, and one of them was a real estate agent, and so then I decided to look into the real estate market. And I had looked back into the real estate market way back in the early 2000s and decided, hey, that not necessarily at that point in time wasn't a career for me, but I just, like I said, the market research started to take off, and so I decided to do that instead. And so with this real estate agent, he talked to me about his work schedule and how much money he was making and stuff, and so I found that attractive, but I'm a more numbers-driven person, so I wanted to go into the numbers side of things, and so that led me into being a mobile mortgage specialist. I looked at working for the bank, and I thought, well, you know, working for the bank is all well and good, but I have to do what's best for the bank. I can't do what's best for the client. So that drove me into the mortgage broker side of the business where, you know, I don't have a boss. I mean, I don't have to come to work every day. I kind of can do whatever I want to do in terms of setting my own schedule. And so that was back in, 2008, I think. And so it's been 11 years that I've been in the mobile business. And so what I did is after I got my course, you're going to need a pen and paper here. Because I want you to write down 3 points for me. So I don't know if you're all looking to get into the real estate side of things, but if you're looking to get into the sales side of things, this just applies. It applies no matter if you're in real estate, if you're in mortgages, you're just in sales. And so it's funny because I remember when I took the mortgage course, what happens is I would ask people in the mortgage course, so it was in Scarborough, you could go in class, you could do segments online. So I did some segments online, and I did some online, some courses and stuff. And so I was asking some of the students in the class was quite large, about 300 students, and I was asking some of the students in the class, well, now that you're licensed, what are you going to do? And so I want to put you in that position, and I want you to write down 3 points. So you're licensed in real estate, you're licensed in mortgages, you're in the sales business, and you're not given any leads, write down the first 3 points that come to your mind on things that you would do to generate yourself business. I'll give you just a second to do that, and then I'm going to have you read some of your answers out, but just jot down 3 things that come to your mind that you would do to generate yourself some business.
This is really interesting because if you would have asked me to do this before I started selling real estate, my answers would have been completely different.
Different than they are today. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so what we're doing with these 3 points, and I kind of want to take you through segments of the career, segments of the last 11 years. So what happened with me is when I started out, they said, great, fine, fantastic. Here's your license. We'll send it to you in the mail. You have to apply to a brokerage house. So in the mortgage business, you have to work for a brokerage house, either a bank or I worked for a company called Dominion Lending. I'll maybe talk about Dominion Lending a little bit later if we have time. But so you have to work for a brokerage house. So they interview you and they decide whether or not they're going to hire you to work for this brokerage house. I got hired. They said, great, fine, fantastic. Show me a copy of your license. I sent them a copy of my license and they said, great, now you're a mortgage person. Go out and do some work. So they even gave me a little office. I sat in this little office and I stared at the wall and I thought to myself, well, great. Now what do I do? Where am I now? So does anybody have any points? What did you write down? What did you write down? Did you write any points down?
Like this, we're talking about like this.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I just went straight up to like social media ads.
Social media ads, yeah. Did anybody else have social media ads? Yeah. Did anybody have anything different? And if so, what? Yep.
I just put volunteer.
Volunteer?
Into a group setting, somewhere you're just in a group of people.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
It's like social media, but I said like your local newspaper and almost like door to door for the people who don't use social media as well.
Okay.
Like the older.
Yeah, your older clientele.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Anything back in this area here? Did anybody write anything else down besides the points that have been talked about?
Does this promote my business?
Okay. And okay, yeah.
That was close to one of mine. 'Cause
Yeah.
I started, now I've done this for almost as long as Greg. If I was starting now, this is unfair because I have this little bit of knowledge, well, a little bit, but I would have made like a promotional video or some sort of marketing piece that showcased all of my talents outside of the industry I was selling in so that people would know. But I never would have done that before. I was like, I'm king real estate, I'm this and that. I've never sold anything, but look how much I know.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
When you go around to like a lot of the other like mortgage people and like leave your card there and then try to go with social events with them and start networking.
Sure, great point. Yeah.
I said look at your sphere of influence to start building like an early portfolio.
Perfect. Perfect. That's great. Any other thoughts before we move on? So this is kind of what I wanted to talk about really quickly, because as you get started in the sales career, you have what you think is you have no clients. And so one of the things that I did right off the bat is that I took my previous job, which was in the health club industry, and so we pre-sold, before the gym doors open, we pre-sold about 2,800 memberships. And so what happens is, by being the boss, I mean, I had access to 2,800 names, email address, and phone numbers, and majority of those people had met me. And so then what I did is I took that large list and I whittled it down to people that I really knew, and then I targeted those people with a letter. And so it's funny, I sent out about 250 letters and mailed them to the people's houses, and I got 3 phone calls. And so it's funny because I was just shooting the breeze with the guys that called me, and I didn't realize that they wanted to talk to me about mortgages, and I was just about to hang up the phone with them, and they're like, well, you sent me the letter, don't you? I want to talk to you about mortgages. And I was just like, oh, okay, great. You know, because they were talking about the health club business and a whole bunch of things. So once we started to talk about mortgages, I remember I got 3 deals off of those 3 clients. All 3 of those people used my services. And then one of those 3 sent me to their friend, and that friend sent me to their friend. And so I wanted to kind of divide things. I call it kind of old school marketing or old school lead generation versus kind of newer school. Somebody mentioned door knocking. Who mentioned door knocking? Yeah. How many doors do you think you'd knock on in a given day?
Well, I actually used to do door-to-door sales.
Okay, perfect.
I said for every 20 houses, you probably get one.
For every 20 houses, you probably get one. And how long would it take you to knock 20 houses?
I do it I sprint, so it's like 30 seconds per door.
What the hell?
No, I used to.
Well, for those that can't sprint, it might take a little bit longer. And so door knocking, they still talk about door knocking today, but it's an older school mentality. You just can't knock on as many doors. It's kind of what you call cold calling. And so it's tougher. You said 1 per 20 is your rate of return. And that's a pretty low rate of return. Who said sphere of influence? What does sphere of influence mean to you?
It's like the people who you surround yourself with that you have common interests with. They can be family members, neighbors, it can be people you have clubs with. So everything you kind of have in like relations.
Would you say everybody in this room is in your sphere of influence?
No.
No? Would you say anybody in this room is in your sphere of influence?
Personally, I think I could find a few, yes.
Few in this room?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe who you sit next to, maybe who you talk to would go, yeah.
There's people obviously in this room who I don't talk to, some I do talk to, so
Right.
it's that way, but.
Right. Okay, so sphere of influence, we had a couple others. What was your point, sorry?
Oh, like a volunteer group.
Volunteer
some sort of
group.
activity.
Yeah, perfect, so face to face. And then what were the two kind of ones back here? We said a portfolio,
yeah.
Perfect.
Promotion of my business.
Promotion of your business, fine, fantastic, okay, great. So, I mean, the thing is, and then you talked about social media, and we'll talk about the power of social media just in a few minutes. So, getting back to my business, I mean, obviously, so I sent out the letter to the 250 people that I knew, and those are called warm leads or warm contacts, or people that I knew. I could pick up the phone and call pretty much all of those 250 people and say to them, hi, it's Greg Baxter, and they wouldn't be like, you're who? What are you doing? And so they were warm leads, so they knew who I was. And then what happens is my transition letter was just like, hey, listen, this is the profession that I've decided to get into, and this is what I'm transitioning into. I know you like me. You've liked me in the past. You've done business with me in the past, so hopefully you'll do business with me in the future. And so one downside to mailing out letters is it's costly. I mean, especially with the increase of stamps today, it's a costly marketing piece. The one good thing about it is that it's direct marketing to people that I know. Door knocking, 1 per 20 is a really low rate of return. Those people don't know you at all. And so especially in the financial service, if I knock on their door and say, hi, how are you? Guess what? I'm here to do your mortgage. They'd be like, get out of here, beat it. It's funny because at my house where I live, I can see from upside, I have an open concept, and I can see the front door from my upstairs. And if it's somebody that I don't know at the front door, I don't even come down and answer. Half the time I don't even answer if it's somebody I know. I just peer down like this, and if they know me really well, they know the garage door is open, and they'll just come in through the garage door, and they'll just help themselves to whatever. And so it's a very low rate of return, door knocking. What about, has anybody been received a telephone call from a marketing company saying you've won a free trip, or you've won $1,000, or any of those?
It's a Nairobi trip, but a Nigerian prince involved in this.
What was that?
Nigerian prince. Yeah.
Oh.
You know those scams?
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's phone scams going on right now. And how many of you, when you get one of those calls, are you like, yes, that was a fantastic phone call, I've won something, go through the process, and you actually win something? Pretty low. And so I'm going to say that when you call people or cold call people, the chances of you getting business out of that are really low. So let's talk about some of the things, mailing the letters to people you know. So you want to talk your sphere of influence, and what happens is I rated my sphere of influence. A, B's, and C's. People that I knew really well went in my A column. People that I kind of saw on a somewhat regular basis went in my B column. And people that were kind of acquaintances that I maybe ran into once a year or that I saw periodically, they'd go in my C column. And so what I did is I really target marketed my A column, my A people, because I knew that they knew me, I knew that they liked me, and people do business with those who they like. And so what happens is my chance of success with those people are really good. I wanted to have, what they didn't know is I wanted to have, if there was 25 people in my A-list, I wanted to have 25 free full-time employees. So what those 25 people were doing was they were saying, anybody who heard of, or was involved in a conversation on mortgages, they would say, you've got to call Greg Baxter. And they'd give them my card or pass my phone number along. You've got to call Greg Baxter. And so what happens is that 25 people in that A column were out there marketing for me, were out there lead generating for me for free. Now my B's and C's weren't so good at that, and my list constantly changed between my A, B's, and C's. People become C's to A's, A's drop off the list completely, and people, I got a call probably 6 months into my career, and the lady said to me, would you stop putting me on your email list and take me off? I find it very offensive. I find it very... And I just was like, okay, great, thanks. That's fine, fantastic. Thank you so much for letting me know. Now I can stop sending you stuff and wasting money on you. So it was fantastic for her to let me know that. So what you want to do is you want to take your sphere of influence. That's the first thing I would do is I drop down a list of everybody that I know, everybody that I come in contact with on a semi-regular basis. And then I'd rate that list from A, B's, and C's, see who I'm going to target market. So that's what I would do to generate leads. So that's what I did early on in my career to kind of generate leads. I want to kind of shift into lead management here once you've got a whole bunch of leads. And so what happens is I did this religiously. I'll share with you a quick story. I got a lead, and I went and knocked on the lady's door, and she wasn't home. And so I sent her a text message, and I said, where are you? And she's like, I'm way up in Sarnia, and I really wanted this deal. And I'm up in Sarnia, and I'm with my family. And I said, okay, great. She's like, it's really hard to find because we're at a cottage. And so I was like, okay, great. I said, I'm going to drive up to see you. And she's like, you're going to drive up to see me? And I said, yeah. I said, I understand that you went to the bank. I really want to work with you. I want your business, and I'm committed to getting your business. And so it's funny. It took me a long time to find her place, and I actually got stuck, and I took pictures of myself getting stuck up in this. Anyway, and the snow was high, and I knocked on this cottage door, and it was, her whole family was there, and they're all standing in the kitchen, and I walk in, and I said, hi, I'm Greg Baxter, I want to do your mortgage. And everybody in the room just was like, what the? Are you kidding me? And I said, no, and I had a little card that I had written out for her, a thank you card for taking my call. I gave her that thank you card, I put it on the table. I could hear the family making fun of me a little bit. They laughed, they giggled, they did a whole bunch of stuff. She spent about 2 minutes talking to me and then dismissed me and said, hey, great, I'll consider you for my mortgage person. I got a call 2 days later, and she said to me, you can do my mortgage. And I thought to myself, well, great, wasn't that fantastic? I made myself $1,500.
You're making me look bad.
I made myself $1,500, and that was a wonderful experience. And so that was early on in my career. And so what happens, if you would ask me to do that today, the chances or the likelihood of me having the time to drive to Sarnia to track this person down would probably be zero. And so I want to thank Mike for the opportunity. I really had to squeeze this appointment in and kind of move some stuff around. And so what happens is, as you do stuff religiously, you're going to get lots of leads. And so let's talk about now, you've talked to all your friends and families, and everybody's calling you, and everybody knows you're the mortgage guy, and everybody really likes you and likes dealing with you, so they send you lots of business. And so what happens is at the beginning of my career, I did this, I did all this lead generation, I got all these leads, they started to come in, and then what happens is I got a little bit too busy, so you stop doing your lead generation, I got a little bit too busy, so the leads would kind of fall off. It's kind of the ebbs and valleys of the sales cycle. And so I needed to come up with a system or hire people that were good at managing my leads for me, managing and capturing those people that come into my new sphere of influence. And so what would happen is you have 10 people to work with, and you have another additional 10 leads, and you're busy working on those 10 people. What do you do with those 10 leads? And so I want to talk really quickly about a CRM. There's tons of CRMs out there, and I know Mike's talked about it a little bit. Yeah. And so there's tons of CRMs out there. They custom make them for mortgages. They custom make them for real estate. You can custom make them yourself. And so what happens is you put people into this drip campaign, they call it, so that you're always touching them. I'm going to digress and share a quick story. So I went to an appointment with a real estate agent, and this person reached out to us 3 months ago, and they said to us, so then we went back and saw them 3 months later, and they said to the real estate agent, we really love you, but we don't like the mortgage guy. And I was right there, and I'm like, why don't you like me? And they said, because our real estate agent stays in contact with us all the time, and you don't. So I thought that was kind of ironic, so I waited till we got out of the appointment, and I said to the real estate agent, I said, wow, you must be really good. Like what are you doing to stay in contact with this client so much? I said, I've called them once a month and sent them a monthly newsletter, so I've contacted them twice a month. What are you doing? He's like, are you kidding me? He's like, I've got them set up on a criteria, so all I do is I plug into the system their house criteria, and it just spits out houses in their price range and what they want to see. And that client thought that that agent was actively looking every day for houses and sending them emails every day on the houses that they were looking for. So that client thought that that real estate agent was reaching out to them every single day. And I was just like, well, I've only called them once a month and written a little handwritten note and sent that to them once a month. And the agent's like, well, that's overkill. Like, what? That's way too much time for me. What are you doing? And so that's what got me to thinking about a CRM or a customized system that I can just plug people's name in and drip campaign, either email, text message, I don't know, newsletter once every while. I mean, that's kind of becoming a thing of the past. But I mean, I would really like to encourage you to get or to look at different CRMs if you're in the sales business. Even if you're not in the sales business, I mean, it's funny, the mayor, Ed Holder right now, I've met Ed many times, and so what's funny with Ed is he's kind of forgetful, I guess I'll change my terminology. He's kind of forgetful, and he introduces himself to me every single time, and he says to me, do you have a business card? And he hands me his business card, and he always hands it to me like this so he can see all of his information. He hands it to me like this, really professionally, and he hands it to me like that, and I said, Ed, listen, I know you're going to put me in your CRM. I'm probably in there 10 times. Like, you keep asking for my business card every time we meet. I'm already built into your CRM. I'm already getting your newsletters. I'm already getting your news feeds. I'm already getting all your blog stuff. You don't need to enter me again. And so it's funny because I don't know, if that happened to me, I'd probably take this guy's business card and go home and see if he was in my CRM. And if he wasn't, I probably wouldn't keep asking him to put him in my CRM, but nonetheless, Ed is a master. I think he's got about 35,000 people in his sphere of influence. And so he's a master at getting business cards and putting them into his CRM and putting them into his information. So we've got lots of leads. What do we do to manage those leads? So after I got enough leads, what happens is I hired somebody to manage those leads for me. And so what his job was is just to make sure that the content that we were sending out was relevant content, making sure that the client felt like they were getting touched by me, Greg Baxter. So right now my assistant, she works out of a Greg Baxter email. Half the time the clients think that it's coming from me, and they'll call me up and they'll be like, hey, you just sent me an email or text on this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh boy, I did. And they'll be like, yeah, you did. And I'm just like, okay, what email did it come from? So it gives me kind of catches me up to speed on where the file's at. So what I did is I hired somebody to manage all this data, all this leads that were coming in. And so, you know, I've got a social media person right now that does all my social media. She does my Facebook, she does my LinkedIn, I'm not on Twitter. I don't find that, just for me personally, Twitter works. But she does all my LinkedIn and my Facebook stuff. And then I've got another assistant that manages my leads. So if you call into the office, she's gonna answer the phone and just say, hey, you know, this is fantastic. You know, let me get your name and number and set you up for an appointment. And then she tries to set my schedule. And so that kind of helps me manage the lead process, and she takes all the leads and makes sure that they're responded to really quickly. And so you said something other than Facebook. I mean, other than social media. You went into to elaborate a little further. Do you remember what that was?
Well, it's kind of like your sphere of influence, but
yeah.
You go down to like certain businesses, like you go to some real estate conventions, and like you hand out your card.
Right.
Well, you can be the seller, but I'm the mortgage guy.
Right. Absolutely. And so that was one of the key things that I did early on in my business. And so what I did is I wanted to identify where leads were going to be generated from. And so it was really by happenstance that this happened to me, but what I did is I work in a real estate office. So I work in Mike's real estate office, so or the Royal LePage that Mike is associated with. And so wherever there's a Royal LePage, whether it's in London, St. Thomas, I don't cover the one in Woodstock just because it's too far for me to have my presence felt. So I work in the London, St. Thomas area. And so what happens is I wanted to identify where leads were going to come from. This is the biggest thing that's made me, one of the biggest things that have made me successful in the business. Is so what happens is I wasn't going to work for the Dominion Lending that I work for. So Dominion Lendings are franchised out, and there was 2 Dominion Lendings in London. And so what happens is the owners of Royal LePage owned a Dominion Lending franchise. Peter Meyer, Robert Brewer, and Peter Hoffman back in the day. And so what happens is Peter Meyer had approached me probably 10 years prior to this, the owner of Royal LePage, to come and be a real estate agent. And I told him, no, I like the career that I'm in, and thanks so much. And so it was funny because my car was getting serviced, and I actually stopped in to see Peter really quickly, and he said to me, great, fine, fantastic, you're going to get into the real estate business. And I said, no, I'm getting into the mortgage business. I'm signing with this other Dominion Lending. And he's like, are you kidding me? He's like, why wouldn't you sign with the Dominion Lending that I own? And so I was just like, I hadn't really even thought of it. And so what I did is I told the other owner of the other Dominion Lending that I wasn't going to work for him, and I started to work for Peter because I identified that a real estate office is a good office to generate leads from. And so I used to sit in the real estate office for hours and hours and hours just saying hi to people, saying hi to real estate agents, and doing exactly what you said, and getting to know realtors because they were a good referral source of business. And so you have to identify where your business is going to come from. How many people in the room want to be real estate agents? Does anybody in here want to be a realtor? 1 person? 2 people? You're kind of, sort of, maybe? Yeah, you're kind of, sort of, maybe?
Yeah, I'm getting
Monday
pushed into that field, maybe.
Monday probably didn't help. When I start my lecture on leads by talking about how horrible some of my clients have been to me.
I don't think that's like veering toward not
Yeah.
getting to it. I think it's more now that it has to be like a course that you have to take, right, instead of just.
Oh, the Humber thing.
Yeah.
You've heard about this,
Yeah, oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, it's changing things for people. They feel like they're going back to school, that they're not just finishing school and getting a license. They feel like they have to go to school again.
Yeah, yeah. So if not real estate, are you sales-minded people?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're sales-minded people, you want to get into some sort of sales profession. Is that safe to say?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, Mike, how am I doing?
Fine. I just don't know if it's just going to stop when it gets to half an hour.
So how long am I?
A 64 gigabyte card. I got to think you're going to be. I might just have to restart it again. Just keep going.
Oh, okay, okay. And so whether you're in the sales business, because like I said, I used to be in the health club business, and I used to train my sales staff. And so what happens is I said to them, I'm going to pay you very little money for people that just walk in the door. I'm going to pay you a lot more money for leads that you generate yourself. So I want you to go and talk to your friends and family, and I want you to talk to your sphere of influence, and I want you to pick up the phone. It's funny because I used to mandate my sales guys in the health club business. They had to make 100 phone calls a day. 100 phone calls a day. Out of that 100 phone calls a day, I knew that 5 people would answer the phone. I knew that out of that 5 people that would answer the phone, they'd book 2 appointments. I know that out of those 2 appointments they would book, they'd tell 1 person. 1 per 100. And so I would say to my sales guys, is that a great way to spend your afternoon? You're going to make 1 per 100. And so how many phone calls do you have to make to fill up your day with 5 or 6 appointments an hour? You can do the math really quickly. 5 appointments, if I said 1 per 100, you got to make 500 phone calls to get that 1 sale. You got to make 1,000 phone calls to get 10 sales. And so what I did is I said to them, let me just show you a quick way that I would go out and I would approach this. And so what I did is I knocked on corporations' doors. And I said to them, hey, Mr. Corporation, I'm going to give you a deal on health clubs. You're losing money because your staff is missing work. And I pointed out all the benefits of working out, how it's going to increase the productivity of his sales staff, and how I'm going to give them a better deal. And so what happens is Coca-Cola. And so what happens is Bill Pickering at the time was the manager at the Coke plant, and he said to me, Greg, listen, we'll give you 50 memberships. And I was like, great, fine, fantastic. Just tell them you're referencing Coke. They'd come in, I'd sign up I signed up about 35 Coke employees. And I said to my staff, you can continue to make your phone calls. I'm going to knock on doors and we'll see who's more successful. And we're going to see who makes more money. And so whether it's a real estate career, whether it's a sales career, nonetheless, you need to do, your boss or employer is going to love you if you go out and generate your own leads, if you go out and generate business. And so I'm still a big face-to-face guy. I'm a little bit, and that ages me, I'm a little bit old school. I have clients all across Canada. I have clients that I've never met that just send me a quick email. I send them a mortgage application. They send me the mortgage application. I do all the documentation. They send me all the docs back, and on we go. What's my retention rate on those clients I've never met? Very low. What's the chances of them sending me a friend or a family member? Very low. What's the chances of me running into them somewhere at the volunteering or at church or at school or at work? Very low. And so what happens is I'm a big face-to-face guy. Lots of younger people like to just do things via text and email. And my rule of thumb is if you want to come and work, hire me, you've got to meet with me once. And so I had a really interesting call, and it was from a lady. And so what happens is when you get enough leads coming in, enough people like you, you become pretty much only referral only. And so I would say that I'm probably about 95% referral only. And this lady called me up on the phone and she said, hey, Greg, I want you to come over to my house. I want you to come over late at night. It's on the outskirts of the city, and it's not really well lit. And so I said to her, well, this is fantastic. This is a true story. And I said to her, that's fantastic. I said, how did you get my name and number? She said, I got your name and number off Facebook. I was like, okay, great. What Facebook friends do we have in common? And she couldn't name any. And so I was just like, I'm not your mortgage guy. Go call somebody else. And so it was funny because then she called me back and she's like, no, I really want to deal with you. Come over to the house. And I said, no, like, you don't understand. If you can't tell me where you got my name and number from, I'm not your mortgage guy. Some guy actually called me up claiming that it was her husband and said, we really want to deal with you as a couple. And I still said, no, I'm not your mortgage guy. I don't want to go over to some dimly lit house on the outskirts of town so that I can do your mortgage. And so what happens is that's part of, you get so many leads that you've got to decipher the leads, and you've got to decipher which ones are the ones that you want to work with and the ones that you don't want to. So I'm just in a few minutes here. So kind of the beginning of your business, you're knocking on the doors, you're doing all your lead generation. I kind of call it a flight path. When you're kind of still getting up in altitude, but you're kind of leveling off there, you still have to do your lead generation activities, and that's where I hired the sales staff. That's when I hired my staff to kind of manage some of those leads. And once you get up and going, it's really quickly now. I could probably, if you guys all stood up in line, lined up here, I could probably assess, it might take me 2 to 3 minutes with some of you to assess whether or not I want to work with you. And so I've just gotten to that point in my career now where I don't work with everybody. The lead isn't worth the work. And so what happens is that when any lead comes in, I either send them an email or I give them a quick phone call. And I prefer the phone call so that I can ask questions. And so what I'm doing is I'm qualifying that lead. Is I'm saying, is that lead worth my time? And so what happens is I'll find out if they've got a job, how much money they make, where their down payment's coming from. 5 key questions that I ask them because I'm qualifying that lead really quickly. If they give me information for that lead that doesn't fit criteria, I might ask them a few more follow-up questions just to categorize them and see where they fit. And if they don't fit into that, hey, the here and now, they might fit into, 6 months from now, and I'll put them in that drip campaign. They might fit into the, hey, they don't qualify, and then I'll send them different information to get them to qualify for a mortgage, to move them through the mortgage process. And so as you become an experienced salesperson, you'll get to know that you can qualify leads. It's just like in the health club business for me. I was able to qualify really quickly whether or not they're going to join that health club, whether or not I'm going to spend time with them, whether or not it's worth it for me to spend that time. Time is your most valuable commodity. For me, it certainly is. I know for Mike, because Mike's really busy, it is for Mike as well. And we don't want to waste time with unqualified leads. And Mike sounds like he shared some of the horror stories with you. We've all got horror stories about sales leads. And the biggest problem that I have is when I get a bum lead and I work that bum lead, I'm mad at myself. I'm mad at myself for taking that lead. I'm mad at myself for spending time on that lead. I'm mad at myself for not doing a better job qualifying that lead. And so the bad leads are on me because I've done the due diligence to qualify the leads. So managing leads really quickly, you need a great program. You cannot do it all your own. I used to think that I could memorize all of my clients' names, where they worked, and a whole bunch of stuff, and I was successful doing that for probably about the first year and a half. You need help. Either it's an assistant, either it's a CRM, either it's some kind of computer program. You're going to need help managing all your leads. If you're successful in the sales career, which majority of you will not be, I'm going to be honest with you, I think that in the process that I've worked for Dominion for 11 years, I've seen hundreds of mortgage agents come and go. I've seen 2 or 3 that stick around and are successful. And so the success rate is very low in the sales business and commission sales. And so you have to be resilient, you have to be tough, you have to be tenacious, you have to go after it, and you have to go get it. And so just as you get successful, as you have the leads, don't think you can do it all yourself. Hire someone to help you. We could talk about Google AdWords, we could talk about analytics, we could talk about a whole bunch of stuff to generate the leads, but we don't have time. So Mike, that's pretty much all I have to say. I mean, I'm sorry it was kind of here, there, and everywhere. If I was a little bit more prepared.
I've been taking all these notes. I'm not texting people. Just
little bit more structure, and so I just want to thank you for your time. I mean, I know that time is money and that you spent money to come to this class and to this course, and I hope that you got something out of it. I mean, if you ever get into the sales business and you want to sit down for a few minutes, I'll certainly make time for you. You can just reference Mike Sloan's name because I won't remember who you are, and I don't want to pretend that I'll remember who you are. But yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, Greg. Wow. You got to run right now, or do you guys have any quick questions? Because we're almost done with class.
Honestly, I thought that was very thorough, and I appreciated it.
Yeah, you're like all over the place. Yeah.
Would you say you were like a naturally born salesperson, or did you, with time, what would you say? Because I know we saw a stat where the number was low for naturally born, but the rest...
Well, and it's interesting because one of the things is in the health club business, I'm just going to use the health club business because I did the whole sales spectrum in the health club business. I would take my sales staff, and what I would do is I would say I'm a salesperson today, and we would go out and we would do the sales training. I think that you can train yourself to be a good salesperson. What I used to do is I used to say to them, I want you to think that you're going to come around the corner, you're going to meet somebody famous, and I want you to get that feeling of excitement. So I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a natural born salesperson, but what I would say is that I've spent a lot of time in the sales industry. I've looked at the psychosis or the psyche behind sales in my market research business, and so that would help propel me to be successful in the sales business. And then what happens is it's just a lot of rehearsing, a lot of sales experience. I mean, if I look back on my sales career, I mean, I'm 45 years old, and I've probably spent at least 20 years in the sales business. And so, I mean, you want to talk about from selling gym memberships to selling mortgages to selling cars to selling, insurance programs to selling anything. I think that I would do okay in that process just because I have that sales training. I think that you can train yourself into being a good salesperson. So naturally born salesperson, I don't know about that. I've just been in sales a long time. And so that's why the mortgage business was a little bit easier for me because I've just been in sales. You have to sell yourself, right? You have to sell that trust. Do people trust you? And it's really interesting. I don't have so much time, but I used to go to work. I mean, I used to not take the mortgage business as seriously as I did because just for certain reasons. And I used to go to work in flip-flops, khakis, and a golf shirt at best. I mean, sometimes I'd come in my shorts, and I'd come in off the golf course or whatever, and I'd just be running around, and I'd just be like, hey, I'm here for a mortgage appointment. Sometimes I'd change in the car. And then what happens is people were shopping me around a lot. I wasn't closing as efficiently as I should have been closing. And so then I used to start to wear just a shirt and some khakis, like a button-down shirt. And so then my closing rate went up, and so now what happens is I never go to work without a shirt and tie, and it's just for my profession. Shirt and tie, sometimes a suit coat, depending on who I'm going to meet. Because what happens is that I want people to feel like they can trust me. I want people to feel like I'm going to be responsible with your money. I want you to feel comfortable in dealing with me. So what happens is the trust factor is huge, and I want to look the part, right? I want to look like I'm going to be successful with your money, and I'm going to treat your money like it's my own. So natural born sales, I don't know about that.
I showed up in board shorts in this one class where we were discussing presentation and
Yeah.
just the initial beginning of the course, and I explained to them that when I'm selling lakefront property and I know they're showing up with a bunch of kids and we're all going to the beach,
Absolutely.
I show up like that.
Yep.
But when I do commercial listings in London, just so you know, this is about as dressed down as I would get. Like you got to play the part,
Yeah.
right? So in Grand Bend, I get to pretty much always wear board shorts and a t-shirt.
Perfect.
Anything else for Greg, guys? He's given you some really good thoughts here. Okay, so everyone that was here today, you guys are good. Okay, I appreciate that very much. All right, and thanks again, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.